So, this story was just told to me by my boyfriend about a week ago, and to be honest, it gives me chills when I think about it. I'll tell this story from his point of view, so that it makes a little more sense. When I was about 9 or 10, me and a couple of other my kids my age would always go to our school's playground on the weekend, when we found ourselves bored at home. There were 6 of us, 4 boys and 2 girls. One Saturday, we had planned to go to the playground around 6 p.m. It was fall, so it was already pretty dark, but my mother was okay with it since our school was only 2 blocks away from the house. So, I grabbed my keys and phone and head out. I meet up with the 2 girls and we walk towards the school to meet up with the 3 other boys. We're playing around, doing whatever it is 10-year-olds do, and eventually we separate and play different games with one another. One of the girls I noticed as I was playing was sitting alone on the swings, looking at her phone. I just assumed that she was playing a game or something, so I just went back to playing. About 6 minutes later, she sent a scream so loud it caught the whole group's attention, even though we were separated across the whole playground, and it wasn't a small playground at all. "Guys!" she screamed. We all turned and looked at her, startled. When I looked, I noticed that she's no longer on her phone, but she's looking straight up onto the sky. One of the boys we were with started to run towards her, so we all ran after him. We got to her, and she is still looking up. So, out of curiosity, I look up. I see nothing but a dark sky, clouds, and a couple of stars. We're all confused now. "You guys don't see that?" she asked us. "No, what are you looking at?" I asked. She points up to what I assume was a star in the sky. I'm standing right next to her, and that was all I really can see. At this point, the rest of the kids have went back to play. "Stand right here. Look where I'm pointing," she said. She moves and stands right in the exact spot that she was standing in, and points up, and I align my eyes to look at whatever she's pointing to. That's when I see it, and I felt my heart begin to fall. At just the right angle, I can see a giant silver and black triangular-shaped spaceship. It was hovering over the entire playground. We could all see it clear as day, but none of the other kids could. My eyes were stuck on it for so long that it feels like hours. It made no noise. If it was still, it didn't move at all. Then, all of a sudden it just vanished, like it was never there. That's how the story ends. Me and my boyfriend believe in aliens and such, but when we tried to research what we saw, we couldn't find anything. Has anyone had a similar experience, and what are your thoughts? The following story you're about to hear is 100% true. Parts of this story might sound like it's from a movie, but I assure you, it all happened to this day, and it's still a mystery of what actually happened. It was the last few minutes of class before school ended for spring break. As me and my best friend Josh were waiting for the buses to pull up and take us home, we began talking about what we wanted to do over our spring break trip. We talked all the way home, from playing basketball, working out, to even building our own go-kart out of scraps that his grandfather had in his old beat-down shed in the back. When we finally arrived at our destination, getting ready to step off the bus, our other friend Kimberly stopped us and asked us if we could meet up a little later that night. See, we all lived in the same area, so we decided to meet up around 11 o'clock so our parents would think we were in bed. Later that night, before we snuck out of our houses, we called Kimberly and asked where she wanted to meet at. We all decided to meet up at a little crossroads section about 4 miles out from where we lived. The only problem is it's all simple gravel roads surrounded by thick woods that stretches about 15 miles to the nearest highway. So, naturally, we were a little scared to begin with to walk out there by ourselves in the dead of night in the middle of nowhere. On the way there, me and my friend Josh were talking about the old haunted slave shack that still resigned there since the 1800s, just about a mile to the left where we were meeting up at. As we pressed forward, my friend and I began feeling like we were being watched from a distance. Shrugging it off, we continued down the old creepy road, still talking about the slave shack that we noticed, a shooting star. It zoomed right in the night sky. This is where this night would haunt us forever. We continued down the old gravel road, still talking, when all of a sudden, we see 2 more shooting stars, then another, and another, until it looked like a machine gun was shooting stars from it. We were amazed by what we had just seen, but we finally reached our destination, seeing Kimberly sitting on the patch of grass on the side of the road. We all hugged and just sat there talking about what we were going to do during spring break. Hours have passed, and it's now 3 a.m. in the morning, still sitting and talking. Then, out of nowhere, this unusually large dog approached us. It was very sweet, a very loving kind of dog, not usual for a stray. I decided to get up and stretch my legs while Kimberly and Josh were still petting the dog. Out of the corner of my eyes, I seen this dog in the distance, sitting in a very propped way, as dogs do when they sit. But as I looked and stared at this dog, all I could see was the black shape of his silhouette. All of a sudden, I felt this eerie feeling come upon me, as if something was going to happen. I noticed the ears on this strange dog were so sharp, it looked like if you were to poke it, it would draw blood. A chilling gust of wind blew all around us as this happened. I heard screams coming from behind me, so I ran over to Kimberly and Josh and asked what had happened. They said that the dog they were petting just disappeared over the sheer drop-off on the other side of the road. Now, let me tell you that anybody or anything that fell off that side would have died, but we see nothing. As they kept looking, I kept hearing strange noises coming from where I'd seen that creepy dog. I walked to where I was before, and I ran back over to see what they were screaming about. And sure enough, that creepy dog was still staring at me, and at that moment, I seen the dog's head looked up and then look back at me. In that moment, a very bright beam of light lit the ground only around us. It was so bright that after the light flashed, I couldn't see anything for about a minute. Kimberly and Josh jumped up as I turned to them and asked, "Please tell me I wasn't the only one to see that." We all agreed it was not our imagination and decided to huddle together and to try to figure out what had just happened. As we stood there, contemplating on what we should do, we all began to feel that feeling again, as if we were being watched. Me and Josh began talking about how we were going to protect Kimberly if anything was to happen. Then, out of nowhere, we turned to Kim to talk to her and noticed that she was pale as a ghost, standing there, lifeless. I was facing the other direction from both of them, and then Josh began to get pale. I asked what's wrong with them, and Josh slowly and quietly said, "Dude, there is something standing about 40 feet behind you." As he told me that, chills ran down my spine through my legs, and I got weak. When I slowly turned around, I was scared of what I'd see. I was mortified. Standing there in the bush, about 40 feet away from me, was a tall black figure, at least 7 to 8 feet tall, and was walking towards us with a limp-like movement. The complete panic and fear blazed through our bodies. I turned to both of them and said, "Start walking home now and don't look back." We started our 4-mile-long frightening journey back home. Along the way there, I kept telling Josh to stay behind Kimberly and calm her down from crying with a panic. I was behind Josh because I wanted to make sure they both were in front of me, so that if anything were to happen, they could get away and get help. As we were almost home, we continued to power walk through the thick woods, down the gravel road, and I started to feel that feeling again, as if someone or something was behind me. I didn't dare look back, afraid of what I might see. But I continued anyway, only to hear gravel being swept away, as if somebody was running at us from behind, chasing. I told them to start running as fast as possible, since we could see Josh's house in the distance. Finally, we were able to get off the gravel road and make it up the hill to his window. We quickly opened it and climbed in, relieved that whatever we just experienced was finally over. All that night, none of us slept a single minute, still wondering and frightened of what happened. We decided to let Kim sleep in the closet of his bedroom till morning, then would walk her home. Weeks went by as it was time for school again. Keeping our story a secret, we told no one of our encounter, fearing what people would think. During lunch, we agreed to start telling people what happened. And to our surprise, some people said that they've had experiences at the small crossroads section also. Some people say it was some sort of alien encounter. Some say it was the Grim Reaper searching for the old slave that haunted the shack nearby and would take anybody it could get. To this day, 14 years ago, we still have no answers as to what or who was with us that frightening spring night. But it has haunted us to this day, and we'll never forget our encounter with the supernatural. Was it an alien, or could it have been the Grim Reaper, as people suggested? I guess I'll never know. Maybe one day I'll find out again, but then again, I don't ever want to know. I'll never go back to that awful place.